G'day, my name's Mark Buttigieg. I am the Parliamentary Secretary for Work, Health and Safety and Industrial Relations here in the New South Wales Parliament. Welcome to episode 7 of On the Workers' Side. Tonight we have the State Secretary of one of Australia's, if not Australia's most famous union, the Australian Workers' Union. His name is Tony Callinan. Good bloke. Thanks for coming, Tony.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate you having me in.
Good on you, mate. Much appreciated. Tony, I might just start. I haven't actually asked you this before in private conversations, but it's always good to know. I gather you got involved in unionism from the tools, did you?
I did, mate. Yeah, look, I growing up in a strong union family. Dad was a coal miner in the Hunter Valley. I'd done my apprenticeship at BHP Steelworks, and I first joined the union to get on the overtime list because the delegates used to control who got the overtime. So that was my first union engagement, and then I became the delegate. And then when the Steelworks closed down, I worked for some contractors, and then was always the union delegate, and then went into the Newcastle office of the AWU. Kevin Marr gave me an opportunity at the old Newcastle branch of the AWU about 21 years ago, and eventually found my way through to the position that I'm honoured to hold today, being New South Wales Branch Secretary.
And when you started first getting involved as a Dello, did you ever think that one day you might end up as Secretary of the Union?
Not for a second, mate. No, right. I was just busy doing what I needed to do. And I said, Dad was a coal miner. I always thought in about 2010, I'd done some extensive training and I'd had time to reflect on where I got my union values and my organising from. And initially, I always thought it was from Dad being a strong unionist, but my organising capacity comes from Mum. Dad used to always say, well, ever Mum was alive, no one would have time to be bored. She would have us all run around for the soccer club, doing all the community events. We're always doing something somewhere, right? So just got my values from my parents and wanted to make a difference to help people out, and that sort of led me to the union. And yeah, couldn't think of doing anything else that I'd rather be doing at this point in time, mate. Still love getting out in front of workers and dealing with disputes and visiting work sites. Over Christmas, I jumped in the car and done 700 or 800k road trip around the transmission projects just to be out on the job and talk to the guys. I love getting out there.
Now, your union is a very old, steeped in history, rich union. Has connections with the Labor Party going way back since day dot.
Yep. Some would claim we started the party, Mark, and I think that's a pretty accurate reflection in Queensland.
Yep.
I've visited the True Knowledge and understand the history. I often say it's our party.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just want to get your thoughts on how you see the unions movement relationship with the Labor Party and why it's so important, because you do hear a lot of naysayers sometimes say, the Labor Party's too influenced by unions and unionism, and no one's in a union these days, all that sort of you that you have. Just wanted to get your perspective as a secretary and a major affiliate of the party, right?
Mate, I meant to say from the onset, we know each other well, and I call a spade, and my direct communication at times often sees me to conflict with people. I don't mean to be offensive, but I have a really strong view on this. I've sat on the floor of state conference and national conference, and I've heard people talk about the unions having too much control of the ALP, and my view is quite simple. It's our party. The unions should have the ultimate control. The union movement started the party to represent the working class. There's no debating that. The history is clear. And anyone in the Labor Party that thinks the union movement has too much control of the party, I have a simple message for them. They should leave the Labor Party and go and start their own, because the union movement, it is our party. It is the Labor Party. It must be run by the union movement. We don't always get it right, and I don't always agree with every position that every union has. My own union makes mistakes at times, but we've got robust processes, democratic processes that must be followed to get the best outcome for the parties, and that's always got to be with what's best for the working class. Has got to be at the forefront of every decision and every debate we have.
Yeah, it's a good point, particularly now, I think, because I just want to see what you think about this rise of obviously coming out of the cost of living crisis and people sort of reaching out for alternatives both on the left and on the right. I want to get your view, and we've seen it unfold in America years in advance, where the results now, this crazy guy Trump in charge of the biggest democracy in the world. I just want to get your view on to what extent is that a product, or could be a product, of left of centre parties like the Labor Party losing touch, divorcing themselves from that base.
Yeah, look, again, I have strong views on this. We've completely lost our way, I think. The party's trying to be everything to everyone, and I think we've lost our relationship with our true core voters, that is the working class. If we focused on employment, local procurement, jobs and more jobs, health, education, aged care, disability services, there's not a member of the community that wouldn't support our policies. When we start talking about every marginalised group and, trying to popularise everything to everyone, we lose our core voters. And I get that a lot of these smaller, I'll call them fringe issues, are very important to those people. Yeah. And we've got to take strong positions on them. We should be supporting these groups, but I think we're often prioritising that ahead of what really matters to our true core voters, and that is the working class. And that's why we see our primary vote where it is, and the rise of people like Pauline Hanson. It's easy to promise everything when you're never going to be in a position to deliver anything.
Yeah.
Pauline and One Nation can say whatever they want. They're probably never going to, I hope they're never in a position where they're able to implement anything. And when we push what their actual policy is, there's no substance. And what is there is aligned with the Liberal Party, because Hanson is just a Liberal. That's a fact. She's voted with the Liberals on everything. So when I see working class people and our members saying they're going to vote Pauline Hanson ahead of Labor, we've lost our way.
Yeah, in fact, a lot of the times when she's had the opportunity to vote for concrete reforms that would have benefited workers, same job, same pay, all those industrial relations reforms that Tony Burke's brought in, they voted against them, right?
Yeah, she's no friend of the working class.
No, but it's funny how people kind of latch onto it as though she is.
It is, right? Because whether we like it or not, people have varying views, and not everyone supports a lot of the marginalised people in the community. And it's easy for Pauline to come out with a controversial statement that pleases a few, but privately, a lot of people don't agree with a lot of our Labor policies. That's, in my opinion, we should stick to the core Labor principles of, secure employment, well-paid, safe jobs, good health services, good education, and look after our sick and elderly people.
So a lot of it is a byproduct of us not realising that that's the problem. It's on us too, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Can I ask you about just one of these issues, which is sort of, it's not a great one-on-one analogy, but it's sort of relevant to it. I know that your union, the AWU, and the newest union in Australia, the TFTU, that is the Textile Forestry...
Timber Furniture and Textile Union. I get the acronyms mixed up too.
Basically, the Timber Workers and Textile Union. You've run a really strong campaign on the Great Koala National Park, which was a classic example of an issue where you had this desire to protect the environment, koala habitat up on the north coast there, but it was also going to cost a lot of jobs. And we tried to sort of balance the two, but I think we could have done a little bit better in hindsight. The unions ended up stepping in and making sure that the workers who were displaced got a good compensation package. Yeah. But just thought it'd be worthwhile you walking us through that, because I think that's a classic issue.
Mate, it is, and it was a very long and drawn-out process. We dedicated a lot of time and resources to it. We sat on the Koala Advisory Panel, or I used to call it the Great Koala Park. I just call it the Koala Park, because I don't think it's that great, to be honest, but... we went for a very thorough process, and the committee came up with 3 recommendations: a smaller park, a medium-sized park, and a large park. Everyone was on a unity ticket. Industry, national parks, business said that the medium-sized park is let's sustainable forestry industry prosper. The large park would have been problematic, and then when it went up to government, we ended up with a park nearly 4 times bigger than the largest proposal, which I was astounded by. And forestry, in my view, I'm not a green activist, I'm a unionist. I'll talk more about our friends from Lean in a second, but forestry is Mother Nature's very own carbon capture and storage system, right? We all learn at a young age that plants take, oxygenate the air and store carbon in them. It's a green industry. Australia's forestry is one of the best regulated in the world. In New South Wales, out of the hundreds of thousands of hectares of native forestry, less than 1% of that is logged per year. So just when that doesn't sound like a small amount, right? But that means that if we start today, in 100 years, we still won't have harvested all the trees. 50, 60-year life cycle. New growth trees, regrowth trees growing at a faster rate than old growth forests generate, store more carbon. They're better for carbon sequestration. The latest expert advice says heaps of koalas, as their numbers were drastically underestimated. And yet we still see Lean and the left of our party at Country Labor Conference trying to move motions for more koala park. Well, my message is clear to them. We need a forestry industry. We can have koalas and we can have forestry. And consistent with my discussion before about people who don't like unions in the Labor Party should go and join their own. Well, there's a party for the environmental activists, and it's the Greens. And our friends from Lean and the ones hiding in the left of the party that prioritise environmental outcomes ahead of jobs and outcomes for the working class, particularly in regional New South Wales, should perhaps reconsider buying a Labor ticket and go and join the Greens. It'd be my message to them.
But this is the point, isn't it? It's not like both your unions have been advocating a path where you can have both, something that's sustainable and retains employment and economic growth in these. People forget these regional towns rely on all the downstream economic benefits. But it's the absolutist view of no, we've basically got to shut the whole industry down because we want to go for nice bushwalks and see koalas. It doesn't.
And again, lots of people that utilise state forests think they're in a national park. Like if you go on the Forest New South Wales website, there's lots of campgrounds, there's lots of walking trails, they're well maintained. Most people wouldn't know that they're in a state forest. They think they're in a national park.
Yeah.
Forestry has some of the best AWU members in forestry, some of the best firefighters there are. When you talk to the other agencies, they're glad to fight fires alongside our members from forestry because they're very well trained, well equipped, and they manage their asset well. I think it's just an extremist view that you can't have both. And when we've seen the latest scientific proven data come out about koala numbers, quickly the activists switch to the greater sugar glider or the next animal, right? But the reality is when those forests burn, and we've seen catastrophic bushfires up and down the east coast, it kills all the animals, the gliders, the koalas, and everything in between, where a well-managed responsible logging operation doesn't have the impact that a wildfire has on these environments. And we will see those fires come again once forestry closes down. And, the activists say, well, forestry's losing millions of dollars a year, but they maintain as much public land, more actually, than the national parks. So when that land is shifted from forestry to national parks, the cost to maintain national parks is going to increase.
Yeah.
So forestry on paper might make a loss, but it generates a lot of income for the government. It provides a lot of employment, particularly in regional towns. There's some towns on the north coast that will be decimated when the industry shuts down. And I've said to government ministers and others, it's not like we can send tourists into a 100,000 hectare block of virgin forest on the north coast and say, just walk down that path and you'll see a koala. You could wander around out there for months and not see one. So I just don't buy that there's going to be tourism jobs.
Yeah.
And our members in forestry, they look at a tree and they don't say, geez, that'd be nice to sit under. I wonder if the koalas like it. They've been brought up in families have had whole generations that look at a tree and they go, how many cubic metres of floorboards can I cut out of that tree, right? That's them. That's their history. That's their industry. That's their heritage.
And we haven't managed this idea of, that's another subject, I suppose, which it just occurs to me we should probably talk about this. You have similar arguments in the coal industry, right? Is shutting these industries down, but not forward planning the transition. I don't like using that just transition, terrible word, but there's this view, it doesn't matter, there'll be new jobs created and they can go off and be X, Y. If you're a 55-year-old forestry worker or a coal miner or whatever, you basically want to keep doing your job for another 10 years.
That's all they know in
right?
some cases, right?
Yeah.
And, for, 15 years or so ago, the AWU started a campaign to reserve some domestic gas supply. And back then we were saying prices could quadruple and go up to $12. Well, I think they're up over 50 or 60 at one stage before the federal government intervened. And we look, for years we've talked about this 50% renewable target, and I've been saying, where's the other 50% going to come from? No one's maintaining any of our coal-fired generators. They're closing them down. They're reaching the end of their lifespan. Something's got to keep the lights on when the wind's not blowing and the sun isn't shining. We seem to be not planning for that transition. We all know we want to increase renewables. I support it. Every house should have solar panels. But in the meantime, we've got to keep the lights on, not just for homes, but for industry. Like Tomago Aluminium uses, 1,000 megawatt hours, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, which is about 12.5%, nearly 13% of New South Wales power consumption.
Wow.
We've got over 600 members there. There's 1,200 direct jobs. And for 18 months now, I've been working with the state and federal government to try and secure the future of that plant. It's one of two, only two left. And with what's happening in the Middle East, it's a sovereign capacity issue, and we need to have a aluminium smelting industry in Australia, and we need support from governments.
So what the issue there's the issue there's the electricity costs, isn't
electricity costs, mate. Yeah, it's just through the roof. They've had a 30-year power supply agreement that runs out at the end of 2028. And thankfully, we had Prime Minister Albanese up there before Christmas making an announcement that the federal government's determined to keep it open. I've been working with Premier Minns and other members of the New South Wales government to ensure that they, contribute and assist the federal government. And that deal's not finalised yet, but I'm still working on it. And we need to save that industry because it is crucial to our sovereign capability. The Hunter region, again, there's thousands of jobs up there. We've got members that have worked there for 30 years. It's the only job they've had in 30 years. They don't want to be retrained.
No.
They want to see it out. And the other thing that nobody talks about when you talk about just transition, it takes a long time to unionise a workplace. We've been bargaining at Tomago since enterprise bargaining was introduced. We've got good wages and conditions, and we've got lots of union members and well-trained delegates. If they all go and disperse into smaller industries and non-unionised industries, they'll be on lower wages and conditions. And you can't unionise industries overnight.
No.
It takes a decade to lift wages and conditions and safety.
Yeah, I don't think enough. We don't put enough effort into. We talk about these transitioning out of industries and renewables and all the rest of it, but we don't really talk about how we're going to do it in a methodical way. So that's the piece that comes first, rather than an afterthought.
Yep. Yeah. And we've got these large companies that for a long time have just been, like we use Tomago example, they're an aluminium manufacturer. And we're talking about, federal government's talking about future made in Australia and investment. And it's good that we've got smaller companies starting up, but some of these larger companies should be gearing up to take on this work. We look at transmission tower construction, which is an area we've got a lot of members in. There's next to no local steel in the towers. There's very little Australian steel even in the reinforcement in the footings. We've got another 10,000 kilometres of transmission tower to do in the next decade. Somebody should be building a mill up to make that steel here rather than import it from China for the next decade.
Yeah.
But nobody's thinking that far ahead. It's just like, we've got to get this done.
And you need some assistance to do that, right? Because the domestic market's so small. But once it starts to grow, we're a growing economy now. I think we're, above 30 million people. So you got to have some foresight with these things. Yeah. Tony, tell me about this, the Palm Workers Scheme. That's an interesting, long-running campaign that the AWU has been involved with, where I think we basically import labour from the Pacific Islands, and the idea is that they get to come and fill the gap in demand for labour that we have here, and they also in theory, earn some money, and both parties benefit. Tell me where that's gone off the rails.
Yeah, so when I first got involved with it 7 or 8 years ago, there's a lot of exploitation, and there still is, unfortunately. These are our proud island neighbours. They're supposed to be our close friends, and they're wonderful people. We have organisers right up and down the East Coast, and we have organisers all around Australia working with these Palm visa workers, and they come back year after year. They do things like picking blueberries and tomatoes. They work in fairly difficult circumstances and provide, as part of the agriculture industry, the food that we all need. But I've seen circumstances on the mid-north coast where I visited a site, and our members were living in shipping containers, like not demountable buildings, actual steel shipping containers, no ventilation, no power, no air conditioning, 2 sets of double bunks, so 4 people in each shipping container. And for the pleasure of living in there and not having any linen or anything provided, they had a bare bunk, they were getting deducted $175 a week out of their wages.
God.
The same people were getting a deduction of $50 to $60 a week for a bus to take them to and from work. So we've done a lot of work again with the federal government, and the scheme is better. We've got a sort of bit of a regulation scheme for the labour providers in that. We've really lifted our profile. We've got reasonable membership density and some good activists.
And they fall under the federal jurisdiction, Fair Work Act.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, as federal system employers. So, we've employed some good staff in our national office to focus on that. Some of that they've from Pacific Islands, so they're natives over there, and it's a lot of work. Larty does a lot of work and good work in that area with our organisers. We had an event on Saturday night up the North Coast with the responsible supply. The Retail Supply Chain Alliance. So it's the AWU, the SDA, and the TWU.
Yep.
And the concept there is from the farm to the shelf. We have a supply chain. Coles and Woolworths are very good, and they're part of that. So we have an events, and we invite, and supported by Coles and Woolies, we invite the farm workers along. We put on them some food and drinks and educate them about their rights. We also do some pre-departure from predominantly Fiji at this stage. We've got an arrangement where we do a sort of pre-departure induction.
Okay.
And they're educated about their rights. So
Yep.
when they get here, they know what their rights are as a worker in Australia. Our national officers run a fairly big campaign around superannuation for those people. We've done a lot of work, and its scheme's not perfect, but it's better now than it's ever been.
Yeah.
And we're slowly unionising the workforce and getting some good outcomes.
Yeah, it's a good campaign. The other one I wanted to talk to you about was the AWU is one of those unions that looks after so many different roles and classifications across the economy. The Qantas technical people, I think, that's another long-running campaign.
Yeah, so we have a bit of coverage. Sometimes it's a blessing. Other times it's a bit of a nightmare, to be honest. Like if, for argument's sake, if I worked for one of, say, the Fire Brigade Union or the Police Union, I have to know one award. But we've got to know everything from grave diggers to hairdressers to construction workers to manufacturing, and including Qantas. So we have members at Qantas under a couple of different enterprise agreements. Some of our members are responsible for the cleaning of the planes. They call them the appearance, and others are in the engineers alongside. We've got an alliance with the AWU and the ETU, and they're burning some industrial action. Qantas is no surprise to anyone, are a notorious hard employer to bargain with. They're impossible to get decent wage increases out of. Members had a wage freeze there, not just from our union. The TWU's done some amazing work there.
They have.
Had some great wins there. But Qantas is a notoriously hard employer, and our members have had a number of disputes there and been on strike, and don't seem receptive at all to that. Qantas think they're a law unto themselves, and I think they just show disrespect for their workers and for the public that utilise their services, right?
Yeah, because we discussed this in previous podcasts, this importation of the American industrial relations philosophy under Joyce. Even under the new CEO, Vanessa Hudson, I think her name is, there's still some remnant sort of. I think she's doing a better job in that respect, but yeah.
Yeah, she is. And look, at some stage when I don't know the exact numbers in the TWU case, it was one of Australia's largest penalties, and great work by them. But surely the company's got to rethink their strategy at some stage, right?
Yeah.
You can't just keep taking Australian workers for granted.
Particularly when they're using Australian brand name, the Flying Kangaroo and all the rest of it. Right. The other one I wanted to raise with you was, and this is a particularly good one because it sort of went under the radar for many years, silicosis and the exposure to silica. So you've got this emblematic sort of, for many years when I was growing up in the workforce, it was asbestosis, mesothelioma, which has quite a long gestation period. It took us a long time, James Hardy cases, PPE, removal of asbestos, all the rest of it. But then silica started to come to the fore in the last 20 years, where young people cutting up engineered stone, but also drilling tunnels.
So we started a campaign around silica dust 5 or 6 years before anyone even thought of the bench tops, right? So we launched a campaign many years ago in relation to silicosis. Our members in tunnelling, particularly here in Sydney with the sandstone, we've done a lot of tunnelling in recent times, but also in quarries. Our Victoria branch had a member in an office worker in a quarry, young mother with 2 daughters, I think. Remember, had 2 children. Apologies, I can't remember her name. I should remember her name. She was diagnosed with silicosis working in the office at a quarry.
Yeah.
So we started this campaign years and years ago. Obviously, bench tops have a much higher concentration of silica, the old bench tops, and it was good that the unions, or everybody got on board, and we've seen a ban of the engineered stone, and now we've got alternate products. But it's still an ongoing problem in tunnelling. We see young workers, fit, healthy young workers diagnosed with what will ultimately be a terminal illness. And the government's done a lot of work, particularly, Minister Kotsis has done a heap of work with us and acknowledged the work she's done.
The
with
register.
the silicosis register. And
Yep.
I sit on the tunnelling industry dust task force safety group. The minister's got me on that and doing a lot of work about improving safety and an education program. We done some training in the AWU office at Granville a couple of years ago around silica for organised from right across the country, and I'd organised for them to visit a tunnel site just to have a look. I won't name the name of the tunnel, but just down the road here in Sydney, it's now finished and open. And they welcomed us on. We had about 13 or 14 organisers. They knew we were coming. They provided a bus and they were giving our organisers a tour. And when they got down to the tunnel face, you couldn't barely see the machinery from the dust and the filtration systems weren't working. And our organiser said, if this is what it's like when you know we're coming, what's it like when we're not here?
Can imagine.
All right?
Yeah.
And so that was a big program to educate our members in tunnelling too, because they're very proud workers. They're hard workers. They want to get the job done. They're often competitive to see who can get the most metres done. But they're slowly killing themselves.
Yeah.
Or not so slowly killing themselves.
Yeah, that's right.
And not just silica
Young
either.
men dying.
Yeah, young men and women
And
dying.
women dying, yeah.
Tragedy.
What about the, and this has been a big one in the national debate, the gas reservation policy. Tell us about that and how that works.
Yeah, so WA has a gas reservation policy which requires, and it's only a very small percentage, I think around 5% of their gas to be reserved and used for domestic use. It's been in place for decades. And we've been working with the federal government, and I know Premier Minns has been open to the idea here for the East Coast as well. And I know that, the government, New South Wales government's been a big supporter of the Narrabri gas project. Again, a lot of our left unions, or some of which probably should be in the Greens, are against gas, but the facts are we need more gas to assist with our transition to renewable energy. So it's a pretty simple process. We let these multinational companies come here, extract our gas, liquefy it, export it, and then we're paying the world price for it. We've got nothing. It seems crazy that we don't make them contribute to Australia.
Yeah, it's amazed me. It's gas is one, and there's a whole range of other sort of natural minerals and resources, and we just let it all go overseas and don't make any money out of it either.
Yeah. And I get they've got to make money and they need certainty for investment, and the former government, the coalition government, issued all these licences and export licences with gas companies. But I'm confident. We've been working with the federal government, and we're quietly confident there'll be some announcements in the near future that will go a certain way anyway, probably not as far as we would hope that they would go, to ensure that we have a domestic supply of gas and we have increased availability. Because manufacturing, one of our workplaces out in Western Sydney, they manufacture food, particularly potato crisps. And a few years ago, their gas bill went up by more than $2 million. Now, there's probably a fair margin made on packets of potato chips, but $2 million extra on your gas is a lot of money. And industries that people don't think of, we're not just talking about large businesses, but things like gas, glass, cement, aluminium, steel, all the way down to food manufacturing, need affordable energy, and a full part of that is affordable gas and a good supply of gas and power.
Yeah, well, hasn't the conflict in the Middle East brought that into sharp relief? I mean, it was a big debate prior to that, but after this,
Well, we've got short memories, Mark. If we think back to COVID, when we couldn't get imports We started making things like hand sanitizer and other products in Australia, and we said we need to be a country that makes things and keep them industries alive. It's only a short period of time since COVID we find ourselves in the Middle East conflict, and we've made the same mistakes all over again. Look at oil refinery and fuel, and I said Tomago aluminium. If we lose Tomago, we're then beholden to the world aluminium market, and when you don't make it yourself, your international competitors can charge you what they like for it. You need it. We've got to maintain our domestic capacity in these areas.
Mate, we could keep going for hours, but there are a couple of things I want to quickly touch on before we wind up. Industrial manslaughter. And we instituted those laws a couple of years ago, but you've got a protection unit, I think, industrial manslaughter protection unit. You want to walk us through that?
Mate, I think it's a great bit of legislation. A problem with a lot of this stuff is then we hope we never have to use it, right? But ultimately, tragically, we do have deaths on site, and it comes down to who does those prosecutions. It's a lot of work. Unions have limited resources. Again, the legislation itself was a really great move, and again, I congratulate the government on the changes they've made to the Work Health and Safety Act and that, particularly the industrial manslaughter. But I often wonder whether it's ever going to, be fully utilised the way in which it should be, because we still see people being injured and worse, killed on site. While the industrial manslaughter's, a positive change. Don't get me started on workers' comp, but we will be here all night. I think we have members, we have workers injured and killed regularly, and I think the late one. And I'll preface this by saying the both state and federal Labor governments done some marvellous things. I'm always supporter of Labor, but I make no apology for calling them out when I think they get it wrong.
Yeah,
and I make no apology for pushing them to do better. We definitely got the workers' comp wrong, but I won't dwell on that. I think lots of the other positive stuff, we just got to now put it into practice. Once we have a few prosecutions, people will take safety, more seriously than they do now. So again, great work by the government to introduce that legislation.
Yeah, but then you got to get the access to prosecute and the expertise.
And then the resources, right?
Yeah.
It's a big job.
Yeah. Just finally, you sort of started with your experience of being exposed to unionism. You had the family background. Your mum was a really good organiser. You had positive experience of union in the workplace. Sometimes I know from my experience when I was an organiser, it's hard. You want to hold on to those people who have got it in them and that passion to become delegates and then hopefully organisers and, the lifeblood of the union. I know you've done some union summer intern programs, which is a really good program. But I just want to get your view as a leader of a major union on how you maintain that enthusiasm and how you pick these people from the workplace, the new leaders of the union movement coming up.
Yeah, leadership, I think, is a funny thing. You don't pick leadership; leadership picks you, right? Your peers decide who the leaders are.
Yeah.
So I've got a policy in our branch, and I'm pretty, very consistent with it. We try and select our best delegates to be organisers. I try and visit every delegates training session we do. This year in New South Wales, we're doing 25 or 26. We'll train about 500 delegates. It's something I've really ramped up since becoming the secretary.
You do that in-house, do you?
We do, a full-time trainer.
Yep.
Tony Stewart run it for us for years. Tony retired at the end of last year, and I've employed a full-time resource now to do it in-house. We do them right across the state. I travel to, Wagga and Griffith and Tamworth, and we train hundreds of delegates. But identifying those, people tend to identify themselves.
Yeah.
The next problem from on then is, I like to see more unionists in politics. As I often say, there's a lot of, wannabe politicians pretending to be unionists and not enough unionists in politics, But when we get good people, I never hold anyone back from our organisation. But I'd like to see a number of my staff move into political roles into the future, because I know we can get so much more positive change working in, better cohesion with our Labor governments and our unions all working together. But we're selecting from a small pool. If you look at our union membership, our density is probably the lowest it's been in decade, not
Yeah.
probably, definitely is for decades. So it's a small pool of people. When you're like me and you've got an opinion and you're not afraid to share it, a lot of people look at you and think you're a lunatic. That's okay. I'm happy to be badged that. I make no apology for what I believe in, and I'll stand up for our members all day, every day. It's all I do. I say to our staff, our members come first, second and third, and our delegates are our most important people in the AWU, and that's the motto we run by under my leadership, and my team's 100% committed to growing our union, building our power. We've now got twice as many regional organisers in our branches. When I become the secretary, the AWU was born in the bush, and some of my predecessors through mergers and other bits and pieces had competing priorities. We've certainly focused on regional New South Wales, and I'll continue to do that. We're growing in regions, and our regions need the support of the Labor governments, and I think if the Labor government starts thinking about what people in regions need and delivering for that, we'll be in a better place in the future than we are
We
now.
might start picking up seats in the regions.
We might start actually winning some seats in the bush again like we used to, right? It's pretty obvious that, the coalition's not delivering for regional towns. Again, that's why a lot of, our national voters are looking to Pauline.
Yeah.
Where Labor is the union of the bush. We've just lost them.
Yeah.
We need to win them back. And focus on all those little fringe areas. Probably doesn't sit too well with some of our people in the regions. Again, that you can't see a doctor if you live in somewhere like Walgett or Warriner, or they've got to travel hundreds of kilometres for what we take for granted. You need cancer treatment. If you need dialysis, you could be travelling 400 or 500 k's each way.
Yeah.
It's not okay. And then you've got the same problem with education and aged care, right?
Yeah, and all the decision making is running out of Sydney Metro or the denser urban areas because they're out of touch with how hard it is in those areas.
And I
to
get
get
that's
stuff.
where the votes are, and you've got to win enough seat to form government because you can't do anything from opposition. But if we're truly going to get back to what I would say the Labor glory days, we need to reconnect with our core voters, which is the working class, which includes peoples in our regions.
Well, on that note, Tony, it's probably a good time to wind up, even though we probably could have gone for another 4 hours.
Again, thanks for having me on.
Good on you, mate. It's been really interesting. Appreciate you coming along.
Awesome. Thank you, Mark. All the best.